Good evening, everyone. It is now 8:02 p.m., and I'm going to go ahead and start tonight's City Council hearing. Thank you for joining us tonight. In general, there are 2 times during a regular meeting when the public may make comments: citizen participation and during public hearings. If you are interested in making a comment, please sign up to speak with the city clerk prior to the start of the meeting. Good, awesome. I'm now going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all could please rise. Thank you. City Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, we do have a quorum this evening. In council chambers, we have Councilmember Estef, Councilmember Wolfley, Councilmember Hawkins, Councilmember Truesdale, and Mayor Pro Tem Ndebumadu.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now I'll move on to any agenda additions, deletions, or amendment for this evening. No, sounds like we're good to go. All right, I'll move on to citizen participation. All right, first up we have Andrew Colvas. If you could come forward, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name's Andrew Kalivas. I'm the property owner on Elder Oaks Boulevard. It's kind of been in the news the last couple weeks. I wanted to come here tonight and just to put a face to the name. I'm not the people that were going through that was Johnson Development. They were, we had a contract on it. They've been looking at it for the last probably year and a half. So I get what happened. I mean, I'm pretty up to date on that. I just wanted to let you all know, as a lifelong resident of Prince George's County myself, I'm willing to work with the city and the local residents so we can get something in there that's more compatible to the area. So that's it. Thank you.
Just as a moment of personal privilege, we appreciate you coming out. Thank you so much for that. Well received. All right, next we'll move on to Christopher Lafredo. I do apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on supporting the proposal you're going to hear about native plants around some of the water improvement installations in the city. My name is Christopher Lafredo. I am a 40-year resident of the county and moved here in the city of Bowie 6 years ago. I live on Shelter Lane, at the bottom of which is one of these terrible eyesores. And what you're going to hear about is a proposal to remedy at least one of those sites, I think, as a demonstration project, which I love as an example of a public-private enterprise. Members of the community will be engaged in raising the plants to go in there, planting them, caring for them in cooperation with the city. In my professional life, I'm a scientist at Georgetown University, and I study the connection between the environment and cancer and how improvement to the environment lowers cancer risk. I'm also a master gardener for Prince George's County in affiliation with the University of Maryland Extension, and I run the plant clinic at the Bowie Farmers Market, where our Bowie residents come and bring us questions about their landscapes, and they want to have a healthy environment. And you're going to hear so many ways in which this proposed plan will actually improve the environment. And as a scientist, I have to tell you, I studied that literature myself, and it's sound. It's science-based. It's based on evidence gathered by ecologists, environmental scientists, horticulturalists, among others. And I do think that it's a small thing to do, but you know, in our world, small things can lead to big things. Everything we do here runs down into the bay. And having the right kind of plants that are adapted to our climate and don't die at the first sign of drought and increased temperature, that's so important. And our neighborhoods, my street especially, it feels hotter and hotter and hotter because of all the trees we lost and are losing. And I think that you're going to hear how installing native plants is a step in that right direction. And so I urge you to support that, and I really am grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaFreda. Love the energy in here tonight. Okay, now we're going to move on to John Teasdale. Thank you, Mr. Teasdale. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. So I'm a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee, and as such, I do have a stake in the presentation, and there are members of the committee here in support. I'm also a member of the Bowie Crofton Garden Club, and there are some members of the Garden Club that are here in support as well. But tonight I'm speaking mainly as a resident of Midwood Lane who lives only one block from the Midwood Lane stormwater management pond, which is the subject of tonight's presentation. As you know, during the renovation of the Midwood Lane stormwater pond and subsequently of other ponds in the city, all the trees were removed from these sites to permit requisite grading and upgrades to meet current stormwater standards. This left a very barren landscape where once there had been a thriving urban tree canopy. Unfortunately, these sites have been left with the barren institutional appearance of an open pit surrounded by a chain link fence. This does a disservice to the city in several ways. First, it is a disservice to residents who live in these neighborhoods, Chris being one that just spoke. The tree canopy of a city is known to enhance property values. Removal of these trees without a revegetation plan reduces the beauty and potential property value of these neighborhoods. Second, the city misses an opportunity to provide important ecological surfaces for our urban ecosystem. These spaces represent an opportunity for creating a mixed canopy of trees, woody shrubs, and herbaceous plants that would provide sustenance and habitat for local food webs consisting of a diverse array of species dependent on this vegetation as a base of the food chain. Recall that the viability and resilience of our natural ecosystems are dependent on maintaining sufficient diversity at all trophic levels to support life on this planet. Third, the City Climate Action Plan calls for enhancing the urban tree canopy in the city. Trees absorb carbon from the atmosphere and therefore play an important role in mitigating greenhouse gas emissions and global warming. Thus, anytime trees are lost from the city, it is important to replant. These stormwater sites need to have a mature tree canopy reestablished to compensate for what has been lost. Speaking of climate change, let me return to the original function of these ponds. Excuse me. As climate change accelerates, storms are expected to become more intense with greater volume of rainfall. This will require state-of-the-art stormwater infrastructure to handle increased water flux throughout the city. So I recognize the importance of these ponds to meet all guidelines designated by federal and state mandates to serve their intended function of managing stormwater. So I want to be clear that I understand that the intended function of these ponds is to manage stormwater, and that this function is an important component of developing resilience to the potential impacts of climate change. But it should be possible to meet these stormwater guidelines while also upgrading the landscaping of these facilities to enhance ecological services and beautify local neighborhoods. So I encourage council to facilitate management solutions that will achieve both the stormwater and the ecological benefits that these facilities can provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teasdale. It looks like we do not have any presentations or city boards and committees this evening, so I'll go ahead and move on to council announcements. Do we have any council announcements this evening? Councilmember Gardner?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ndevamadu. Good evening, everyone. I am and have been receiving a number of letters in either on both sides of the issue, rather they are supportive or in disagreement of this new proposed lounge and restaurant and nightclub coming to Marketplace. It is half note. And I am hosting a town hall meeting this Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. at the Ken Hill Center. The owners of the restaurant, bar and grill or lounge will be in attendance as well, so that our residents will have an opportunity to hear what their plans are for that location. And residents will have an opportunity to voice their opinions on this as well. I do want to mention that to both my colleague, the district council member, of course he is definitely invited, Councilmember Wolfley, as well as the at-large council member, Jared Hawkins, and I will be there myself. So as we mentioned previously, because of the charter, and we have to be mindful of that and its laws, there will only be 3 of us in attendance for that evening. But thank you. I hope to see you there and give you an opportunity to voice your opinion as well as hear from the owners themselves. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ndevamadu.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Gardner. Are there any other announcements? All righty. I will move on to our city manager's report. Mr. City Manager?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council, and residents. My only comment tonight is that we're working really hard to prepare the budget for FY 2024 that we'll be presenting to you next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. City Manager. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. At this time, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same favor. Motion carries. All right, there is no old business this evening, so I'll just move on to new business. Item A, I will turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Tiffany Wright. I am the watershed manager in the Department of Planning and Sustainability. And quick background on this, we had a couple citizens mention the stormwater ponds on Midwood Lane and in like Spangler Lane, and those ponds were upgraded recently to meet our stormwater requirements for our permit. And so we have worked with the Environmental Advisory Committee, and the chair, Ms. Abby Snyder, is here this evening to do the presentation. And Abby, I will turn it over to you, please.
How do I get to the next slide, just so I know? Just tell you? Okay, perfect. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. Thank you so much for hearing this proposal this evening. Just so you know, I do have my expert over here from my committee, Elmer. This is really kind of his pet project. He knows all the details about this, so any, important questions, I'm probably gonna let you ask them to him. But this has been a real labor of love. And I know you all are very used to the EAC coming and giving a full report on all of their priorities, but this is just something that we have found to be so high priority that it's taking precedent, and we're really excited to share with you. So, next slide, please. The objectives for this project, we have, as you have heard, seen a lot of concern around the need to improve the landscaping around these stormwater ponds. we took a trip as some members of the committee and some experts actually out to the NASA property a few months ago to see kind of what they've been doing with their retrofits. And then from there convened back at the Midwood Lane Stormwater Pond, and just seeing the stark difference between all this amazing work that they've been putting in with USGS and all of these things, and then we go over there to this really barren, dead grass landscape. It was a pretty stark difference, and that's when we really realized this is a great place to start. And so what we are proposing to you all this evening is creating kind of a pilot program with your approval where our committee and our volunteers will come and do the work, show you what this area could look like, and then, you know, if you are pleased with it, hopefully we'll put some money in the budget and make it happen in other areas. So, as it says, the recommended updating specs will be the next step after that, so that kind of the native plants that we use and whatnot, all this needs to be updated in the manuals that we all use for public works and whatnot, just to make sure that all the proper plants are being used. So that's kind of like a later down the road piece, but we're starting with this pilot program. So next slide. And again, so current practices with landscaping around our stormwater retrofits. As you can see in that top picture there, that's what the Midwood Lane used to look like before we started the process of the retrofit, and now that's what it looks like. And so it's sad. We're a city that's really focused on tree canopies, climate action, all of these things. And as you can see, it's kind of almost promoting the complete opposite as a landscaping plan. So next, please. As you know, as part of the climate action plan, we are really focusing on reducing community-wide greenhouse gases. And in this pilot program, though we'll be using more native plants rather than trees, you all are very used to hearing trees reduce, you know, they do all the carbon sequestration. The deep roots from the native plants that we will be putting in this pilot project will actually facilitate in a very similar way. So it doesn't have to be trees that do this turnover. And so we're really hopeful that even just this pilot piece will help with that. Next slide. So why do we care? Well, there's a lot of reasons why we care. We, you know, this past year took a really hard hit to our tree canopy in the city. You all know this. We had 2 major storms back to back that pretty much demolished the areas where they touched down, and we lost a lot of trees. And since then, there's also a lot of people who have almost, you know, the fear of God struck in them. They're like, I'm going to cut down my tree so that this doesn't happen to me, so that it doesn't fall on my house. And it's a big loss for our city. And again, you know, decline in aesthetics. We don't like to see this open, barren stormwater hole in the ground when there could be so much more there. And John, when he spoke previously in citizen participation, and so did I'm spacing on your name, Christopher, thank you. Speaking about how it's hotter, they feel the difference when they're living right in that community when there's no vegetation there. So these are all really important things that can be easily fixed. Next. So what are we gonna do? This pilot program, what we are hoping to accomplish with help from Elmer and his good friends at the Bee Lab down the road on 197, they have been cultivating and growing native plants for us to use for this project. So it will be completely free of charge. What we will, in theory, do, and I think this is on another slide, but I'm just gonna go ahead and explain it now. We will bring in wood chips that are donated to cover the ground of the pilot area so that it can be properly bred for planting. And then come the fall, we will plant these beautiful plants that Elmer has been growing that are actual native plants in this area. And then step 2, as I said a little later down the line, we will update the internal specs so that we are using the proper native plants moving forward. So back to Midwood for a second. As you can see on the left, The engineer's plan that was proposed to these neighborhoods when we were working on this project was this beautiful green grass, all these trees, and it was gonna look really, really nice. And then you look at the 2022 aerial and you're like, wait, that's not what is in that beautiful picture. It's pretty dead over there. You can see there are some baby trees kind of lining the sides, but it's definitely not living up to its potential. And so, again, just a little more, all of the plant landscaping, you can see there's a lot of diversity there. There are a lot of trees that were supposed to be going in there. And then because of budget cuts in other areas, you know, things suffer. And where we were down to just having 2 extra trees planted, and that's unfortunate. So our proposed pilot area is right where that circle is, so kind of that back corner there where it's nice and flat. We're not trying to get into the slopes at all, get down in near where the water is. That's for a much later date and possibly out of our own volunteer hands. But we think that's a nice level ground to just kind of experiment and see how you all feel about it. And so again, this kind of just goes through step by step. The native plants are being grown as we speak. We will assemble our own volunteers. We will get the wood chips. We will plant the flowers. We will be doing all of this at no cost to the city. And it's really up to you all to decide once you see it go through a couple growing seasons, wow, this looks great. Maybe we'd like to invest more to finish out that property and then to go to other ones. So this is our goal. As you can see, that picture on the left might look familiar if you squint hard enough. It's right out back. And that's the dream. That's what we're hoping it will look like, with nice, beautiful vegetation that isn't overgrown, isn't overbearing, but is really helping to reduce carbon emissions and will give, you know, benefited aesthetics and whatnot. So these are the 3 plants that Elmer is currently working on growing for us. Just to take a quick look, I think they look pretty nice myself. Nothing too outrageous, but I think they will really help with the aesthetic and will help with the environmental impact overall. So our next steps, we need you to approve this. Give us the green light. Let us know if you are good with us moving forward with this pilot program, and then we will get to work. Again, no city resources are going to be used, and Tiffany did have a conversation with the people at Public Works about minimal like manicuring that might be needed, and they said as long as you provide us with a list of to-dos, we are good with that. And then future projects will be updating specs, expanding, and whatnot. And this is just a snapshot of current specifications, what they look like, and what we should be doing, and all that good stuff. I don't want to belabor these points too much. These are some of the experts that we have currently been working with. Many of these actually came out with us on our day when we went to NASA and then came back, and they helped us kind of curate that plan of wood chips and then plants. And so they'll be kind of integral in moving forward with this and expanding when the time comes. And we'll go through benefits real quick. I don't want to waste your time. You all know this. Increasing carbon storage, reducing heat effects. This will also save money in the long run. Less mowing, more valuable staff time for other projects. You will see the difference in that one, not so much tomorrow, but definitely in the bottom line. And we want to be setting an example. The city of Bowie has been really good at sustainability and being on top of things, aside from twice-a-week trash pickup, but that's not relative. But so we are usually one of the ones at the forefront. And so making sure that we continue to lead on these types of projects and be an example and be the photos that people are using in their city council presentations moving forward, that's important. And so in conclusion, we want to set the example. We want to deliver better results for the residents. These are things that they are coming to us about, and we want to make sure that we're acting on it. So I will open it up for questions. I'm going to bring Elmer up here and let us know what you got.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Abby. That was great. Do we have any questions? Oh, Councilmember Steph, go ahead.
I noticed you asked for us to give you the green light.
Yes, yes.
Nice.
The green light, the sustainable green.
So my colleague, Dufour Wolfley, and I have been screaming and kicking and crying about stormwater management ponds ever since we dug those awful holes in the ground.
Yes.
I think Dufour and I remember attending a lot of meetings with very concerned and distraught residents back when the state told us we had to do this at our expense. It's very expensive, it turns out, to dig a lot of holes in the ground, but the state really insists on this, and we get it. Health of the bay is important. But ever since then, we have been absolutely apoplectic about the appearance of these particular sites, and I cannot thank you all enough for your work doing this. I love the idea of a pilot program. I love the idea that you're going to do all the work and we get to take the credit for it.
Yeah, you got
I
it.
love that it doesn't cost any money in the pilot phase. You guys are just, Fred Robinson used to say we could not afford to hire the talent that we have on our committees, and this is a great example of that. Your work is absolutely fantastic on this. I only have positive things to say. I'm very excited to see the end results, and anything we can do to be helpful, please let us know. In the long term, we are going to have to throw in some actual cash to make these, citywide and to treat all these stormwater management ponds more like public spaces, that deserve kind of some bucolic features and some aesthetic appeal. We'll get there. I know Dufour and I will have our checkbooks ready, and by our checkbooks, I mean your checkbooks ready.
Yes.
When that time comes. But this is so awesome, and I just can't thank you guys all enough, and for your leadership on this as well, Abby. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, very much kudos to Elmer. He has continued to push this onto our agenda, and it really is so important. And he is such an expert on this. I'm so grateful to have him as a partner in this project, and he has really led the way on it. So thank you.
Do we have any other? Councilmember Wolfley?
Well, first of all, I cannot thank you both enough, and the rest of the committee members as well. Elmer, your knowledge it just continues to reap tremendous benefits for the community. Greatly appreciate what you bring to the table. Abby, your energy commitment organization, getting everything in place. This is just absolutely fantastic. I will, say that I don't care much for the pilot. I just want to go implement it everywhere right now.
We feel that. We're with you.
But
we understand there's a budget, so.
Yeah. And actually, I will make a comment on that in a little bit as well. First of all, I've heard, since we were obligated to make the quote improvements, and they are genuine improvements, they do help the bay. That's beneficial, but it does have some side effects, and it's just not perfect. It's not where we are right now, where I think kind of a starting bare minimum point, and I think this is kind of the icing on the cake. We're meeting the requirements, and now we're going to actually exceed, and we're going to provide benefits not just to the environment, but also to the communities, because there was a great deal of concern, when these things were first talked about, and actually wasn't so much when they first spoken about, because nobody really, people say, there's no stormwater pond in my neighborhood, and then they came by and they go like, who the heck took all those trees? Right. Well, there were notices about we didn't know that was a pond. We had no idea. They've been there since, Levitt planted houses, right. Dug a hole, and then, pine trees. Next thing you know, the entire thing is, fortified with, foreign trees and other things. So this is absolutely fantastic that we're able to do this, and I think it's a tremendous benefit to the community from an aesthetic standpoint as well as an environmental standpoint. So I think once again, thank you so very much for the fantastic work. And if you ever doubt that you're making a difference in the community, this is one of those things where it's not just this one little corner, but it's gonna spread everywhere. Elmer, go. What you got?
Yeah, I have one request.
And
that is, Bowie wants to be a cutting-edge community. Don't we all agree? We want to be where things are happening. There is a interdisciplinary, interactivity organization made of professionals that are dedicated to exactly what we're talking about, that the city could become a member of. It's just basically a basic membership fee, and what it does is it opens access to all sorts of educational materials on how some of our wonderful staff can continue to implement these things.
I love it.
And the name of that organization is the Ecological Landscape Alliance. And I will forward information to the city clerk on that. But they're an outstanding organization. One of the cities that is considered one of the star performers in that area is the city of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is very equivalent, I think, to Bowie's aspirations and things. And you know, why not claim the first right of we're providing some leadership in Maryland in this area, and it's coming from the city of Bowie.
I like it. Thank you, Elmer. That's excellent. I'll say a couple more things just ever so quickly. First of all, we have stormwater ponds all over the city. They also have special taxing districts for those. So I think we have some work to do in terms of, as soon as we get this going, I think it would be great to develop a standard policy for all of the facilities that are either under our direct control or indirect, and start working towards those. And we do have, I don't want to say they're off budget, but they are minor expenses that I think will, in the end, actually benefit the ponds themselves and their funds, because we won't have to be paying for mowing and maintenance and that sort of stuff. So I think there's a benefit there as well. But of course, it's the whole purpose of the ponds is to benefit the environment anyway. So I think we can make a good case for upgrading those ponds as well. And they have special taxing districts which can contribute a couple nickels here and there to make that happen across the board. So it's not just a right off of our standard budget. So I think as soon as we get this done, I think we ought to be looking to how we can roll it out across in terms of a citywide policy, and then we can look at the funding. I don't think it's going to be a huge dollar amount.
Yeah.
And I'm, as a city manager, will tell you I'm not one for opening up new expense accounts, but I do think this is very beneficial in both the financial aspect as well as the environmental. So again, thank you so very much. Great work, and it's good hearing from the entire rest of the team as well.
Yeah.
And bully for the EAC. I think this is a big win for everybody.
Definitely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolfley. Are there any other council members that would like to make questions or comments? Councilmember Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, Abby and Elmer, and to the EAC. Thank you for putting this together. This is something that I really appreciate. When I was in the county council in Upper Marlboro, I worked a lot around storm water management, ponds, and the aesthetic issue, and also the trees and everything that you're doing. And also there's a safety component that comes into play with this. And so just really appreciate it. And please keep us updated on when this work is being done. Yeah. I'll be honest with you, it's not above me or beneath me to roll up my sleeves and get involved in that too. So
okay, so you just signed yourself up, and we'll make sure you are there. Thank you. We're always looking for volunteers.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I really do think this is one of the opportunities. We speak of the city of Bowie. The city of Bowie, in reality, is a city with a bunch of different communities. And this is one way to make a community shine, for it to focus on something in its neighborhood and, build a volunteer cadre to sort of help police that situation, and the satisfaction of doing something in your own neighborhood is immense in this day. So, keep that as a strong caveat in this.
Thank you. Councilmember Truesdale.
Yes. I just want to thank you guys for coming. Wonderful presentation. I love it. Just one question I have. How many years or how many did you project, or how many years do you project to see the final results?
Okay. Of course, it's always a function of manpower, dollars, and time. And the way I look at the area there, what we're putting in right now is the quick and long-lasting part that people are going to be able to notice first, because it takes a long time for trees and shrubs to become noticeable. And so I would say, a 3 to 5 year basis of completing something like this is what I would think is realistic. And that's to do the job right, you know. And always when you start on something like this, you know, you go in and conditions may be a little different, or the situation may be a little bit different. That gives us the opportunity to fine tune this thing, along with working on comparable budgets, you know, like for getting trees and shrubs. I know where we can get them as cheap as we can get them, and legally within the city can do purchase orders for them. But that all takes time, and again, it takes money. So, and that's backloaded towards the latter part of that 3 to 5 year, I would say.
Right, just one more question. So I heard you talk about the educational piece, right? So would there be like a learning descriptive of any type of, like, that we can understand, and, what flowers of this type, you know?
Let me just add something on that, and honestly, it's a very important question you ask, because I look at education as the key to everything. Yeah. And I currently do a whole series of educational programs at the Patuxent Refuge on exactly this topic. Of course, citizens today are welcome to come to it. We would love to have more programs, and Chris, my counterpart in the Garden Club has been a visionary in trying to make the public aware of these things. And so there's certainly all sorts of opportunities. Natural Resources Team, which is a subgroup of the Green Team, we're always trying to develop educational opportunities. And we had a very good program last fall that 40 residents attended at a new planting that we did at Kent Hill Center. And we certainly want to build that. We want to build a partnership of that. There needs a vision of education in this community, and I think this is a wonderful component of that.
Thank you much. Thank you much.
Thank you so much. I think this is a phenomenal proposal, and I want to thank you both for bringing it forward to us this evening. I think it checks off two things for me, which is sustainability and community engagement. There's nothing like providing an oasis, one, for natural habitat, and number two, for people to feel engaged and connected to and inspired by just natural beings. So I think this is phenomenal. I do have a couple questions for you, well, two in particular. One, you said that it doesn't require any city resources. So I'm just curious, how are you paying for it? Because I'm assuming you're paying, there's something involved, like materials.
The wood chips can be donated from different suppliers. So between Elmer and some of our other colleagues that we worked with, we will be able to receive those. And then Elmer has been growing the plants with his colleagues at the Bee Lab to be donated to this project.
Yeah, and I'm donating the seed for this.
Yes. So Elmer is paying for it, yes.
There is some money involved, but it's seed, and you know how seed is in comparison to the cost of everything else. It's minimal.
Okay.
And we have an amazing partnership built now with U.S. Geological Services. They're a national monitoring laboratory for the health of our native bees. We're working in partnership with them.
Awesome.
And I'm sure we can probably get some additional value added by their work with us. Because this is a national organization. Sam Droege, who is one of the people mentioned, he's an international figure on habitats when it comes to pollinators. And he's literally right at our doorstep here. You know, you go literally 3 miles north of Bowie State, and his facility is right in there on the right. Yeah. And we are there to be a partner to that.
That's awesome.
Again, another tribute to Bowie. We are there helping.
Yeah. Well, I asked that question because I really would not have been able to sleep tonight if I walked away and you said that you were paying for it. I really would have felt uncomfortable about that. I'm just going to be transparent.
I appreciate that.
So I'm glad that's the situation. And then the second question is, how does this effort, this pilot program, contribute to our long-term sustainability goals?
Yeah, so really it's kind of twofold. By putting in those native plants, we are helping with carbon sequestration in that area. So that's a small piece of it, but by seeing it, understanding it, getting the hands-on community engagement, and then taking it broader and investing the money, if you all see fit in that, and really, doing this on all of these retrofits, that's going to make a big impact in our action plan in many facets.
I love that. And I do have one more question I just thought of. How can we scale this and turn this more into a community engagement effort and have younger kids learn more about the work that you're doing and also just expose them in a way that they probably haven't been exposed before? How can we support you in that?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that we did talk about, and I'm happy to let Elmer touch on this too, we talked about reaching out to the Girl Scout troops and the Boy Scout troops and kind of those areas. I'm wondering if maybe even like putting something out at the gym or, what have you, just to try and get extra engagement. We also happen to have Una coming to our meeting on Wednesday, so maybe we can talk to her a little bit there about how we do some more outreach from that point to get people to come and show up and help with this. But happy to take any ideas that you all have as well. And if, in your weekly emails that you send out, you're willing to put information in about it, we would welcome that for sure.
How about having the native plant of the month?
Well, I love that. We will task Elmer with getting you the details on that.
That would be great.
One quick comment I would say, I mentioned the program that the Natural Resources team did this fall. We did a targeted direct mailing to actually the community immediately around Kent Hill Center. Mm-hmm. And we had, percentage-wise, a very high response in terms of those attending. And that, to me, is a template of how we could engage those communities as we work on different locations. And like I said, I think once you start creating an identity in a community, a lot of wonderful things can happen. And
Absolutely.
This can be a catalyst for a lot of that. We're currently working with one of the Boy Scout troops out of the Catholic school on 450, and they're going to actually be helping transplant the seedlings and transplant the big plants in the fall. So and so there is the teaching moment on that is we get kids involved from beginning to the end. Absolutely. And we will have them already committed to be sustainable citizens. Absolutely. By being a part of that.
I think just two suggestions that I'll throw out before we move on to the next agenda item is I think Joe at Bowie High School would love to get some of those kids involved in this because I think that's a really great opportunity and more exposure for them. Yeah, for sure. And then also there's a sorority that has been thinking about doing an Earth Day kind of effort in the city of Bowie, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So it might be good for you to also connect with them because they have a large membership base in the city of Bowie to just get some more people engaged and get you some more volunteers. But we're all full of ideas and we can all help out in various ways.
That'd be great.
I know Councilmember Gardner is supportive. I know Mayor Adams is supportive. So you definitely have the support of council. I will turn to staff. Do you need anything from us for them to go forth with a pilot city manager lot, or are they good to go, or what do you need from us?
Oh, they're free to conduct their pilot without our, no, really, proceed.
I mean, it is on your property, so
right,
you need a vote or something.
And we want full engagement with your staff to have every aspect of this be a win-win program.
The reality is you have to unlock the gate. So as long as you're good with that, we're good with that.
I don't think we'll have a problem with that.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for coming out this evening. We appreciate it. Awesome. So now I'll move over to agenda item B under new business, Tanglewood Property Master Plan. I'll turn it over to staff.
Great. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name is Matt Reno. I'm a project manager with the Department of Community Services. And tonight what we'd like to do is share with you where we are with the development of a master plan for what is now referred to as the Tanglewood Natural Area. Our consultant, Human and Roadie, has been assisting us since January with the development of a master plan. You may recall that in March of last year, the Friends of Tanglewood group, along with the MAPS committee, had shared with you a presentation bringing to your attention some concerns they had with regards to Tanglewood. And Staff had discussed the best approach. What we came up with was it would be worth it for us to reevaluate the pre-existing 1990 Tanglewood Master Plan. So we brought on a consultant, as I said, Human and Rohde. They helped us develop a new master plan. At the time that the Friends of Tanglewood presented to you, they shared some of their concerns, which basically resulted in their request to redesignate the property and preserve it. They wanted to have some parking and signage and increased awareness, and then, of course, some improved maintenance of the facility. At the same time, Council shared with us some concerns, and not so much concerns, I should say, really a request to look at making some of the trails at Tanglewood accessible, as well as looking at how we can utilize grants to help fund any improvements that the master plan may bring forward. And then lastly, the council was in agreement that they felt we should be redesignating that as an official city property. So we did hold 2 stakeholders meetings. So in January, we began this process. 2 stakeholders meetings were held. One was on January 24th, and the second one was on March 16th. We had an outstanding turnout of both members of the Friends of Tanglewood group, as well as the MAPS group, and a number of concerned and citizens from that area within Old Bowie. So at this point, what I'd like to do is ask Lynette Pinney with Human and Rohde to come up, and what they were going to do is she's going to share with you a summary of the master plan process, as well as some of the key points within the master plan.
Thank you very much, and I want to say that that was going to be a really hard act to follow here tonight, so hopefully I won't bore you all too very much. But I do also want to say to start out that Human and Rohde, we really appreciate this opportunity to help the city and the community with this project. It's what we do, it's what we like to help communities with this kind of thing. And so we'll just segue into just talking about our master plan process so you know how we approach a project like this. We take a look at all the available materials, GIS topography, we visit the site, we talk with the stakeholders, with the city staff, we assemble all the information that we can about existing conditions. Like I said, we look at the site, we walk the site, look at the vegetation and the soils and the topography and all of that. And we take all that information, prepare a site analysis plan, which we'll see here shortly in the presentation. Then, as Matt was explaining, we get stakeholder input from the community, including the city staff, on how we want to program the site, how we want to use it. And in this case, we particularly wanted to talk about preferences for trailhead parking, location, and trailhead amenities. So after that process has taken place, we prepare a draft master plan drawing, which we will present in the slides, but there's also a hard copy in the back corner of the room to look at full scale. And this is a drawing that represents recommendations for how to improve the site and meet the expectations of the community and the city, and while taking into consideration all of the site conditions and all the restrictions and all the programming that we've been talking about. And so we're here tonight to present the draft master plan to you all for comment as well, and the public for comment. We also have in the presentation some information about estimates for costs for implementing the master plan, as well as maintenance practices. And that, I know that's one of the most important things that you all want to consider. And finally, after you all have taken all of this information into consideration, we will then take your input and prepare a final master plan and final master plan report. And this report is, as it says, a record of all this process that we've been going through, contains all the documents, all of our plans and the cost estimates, and it has a very thorough explanation of how we got to this point. And I believe that a preliminary draft of that document was in the package that you all received prior to this meeting. Like I said, after this meeting, we'll complete the report that will include your input and finalize the process. And then finally, we'll present the the final master plan and the report to you all for adoption. Yep, that did work, okay. So, but first, we don't have a lot of people in the audience, but it looks like maybe most of you have already participated in the process, so you're pretty well aware of the project itself, the property itself, and if not, I'm going to go through it anyway very quickly. Go. I'm going to go through it very quickly, and so that you can all be oriented to what we're talking about this evening, in case you haven't had the opportunity to actually visit the site itself. So it is, Tanglewood property is, yeah, thank you, Matt, approximately 128 acres in total. It's a wooded site now, and it's bounded by the Zug Road at the north, on the very top there, and it goes down to the east. The Pope's Creek Line Railroad comes down that side. Then the south side is the Northridge neighborhood and community, and then on the west side is the Amtrak line. So that yellow line forms the boundary of the property, as you see it up there. And let's see, I wanted to also point out that, Matt, up here is the major access point on Zug Road where people actually come to visit, come to that location on Zug Road, and then the folks from the south, from Northridge, can access the property from the south, and we'll show you those entry points in just a moment. But we also have some things to show out. We have the New Stop Branch stream that goes along the southern portion that sort of divides Northridge from the property. And then there's also a smaller stream that goes along the eastern edge, so paralleling the Pope's Creek line. And there are, well, associated with streams or stream buffers. There's also some wetlands in here and so on. So there's a lot of environmental situations and environmental properties that are governing some of the things that we can do with this property. Also want to point out, and it's very hard to see in this slide, and I apologize, but there are some green lines that sort of spiderweb around, and those represent the natural trails that go throughout the wooded areas that were some of the ones that were originally developed during when the property first became a park for the city. And then over time, in recent years, the community groups like the Friends of Tanglewood and the MAPS organization have added some additional trails to that trail system, if you will. And all of those trails are just natural trails. There is no improved, surfacing on them at all. It's just a nice walk through the woods, so to speak. But I also do want to point out, just so that you're aware, that this is not a flat site by any means, that between, the low areas, which are these streams, up to the sort of the peak in the middle, there's a 50 to 60 foot grade change from those low areas to the top. So it is not by any means a flat site. So it has its challenges because of that, as well as all of those, the streams and so on that are there. There are also little channels that go through, and that'll be more evident in another map that I'm going to show here shortly. So also just very, very, very brief history of the site. Originally in the 1800s, it was the Zug Farm. So this property was once farmed, of course, and over time, nature's just taken over since farming has stopped on the property. There was also, excuse me, let me try that again. There was also a baseball field in the northern part of the property at one point, and when the property became a park, there was at one point a road that went up to a little parking area, sort of in this area that has the yellow arrow going to it. And over time, those things have been abandoned, and nature, as I said, has taken over, and this site is largely just wooded now. No evidence of any farming or anything like that on the property. So we'll just take a quick look at the entrance points. On the left is the Zug Road entrance. That's the northern entrance that we're pointing out. And it is, again, difficult to see, but there is the old gate is still here from when it was a park road that went up to the top of the hill. That's not, it's been abandoned, and these concrete barriers have been in place for many, many years because it was problematic through time that there perpetual illegal dumping people just drive up there and dump stuff up at the top of the hill, and no one to regulate that thing going on. So it was all closed off and sort of, closed off. However, people still visit the site, and when they do, they park along the shoulder along Zug Road. On the right side of this slide is the entrance from the Northridge community. And I'm just going to, on this lower slide is where we have actually our property here on this right-hand side of the picture. And you kind of come down from the green trail, down the black trail, down this sort of billy goat trail, and cross the creek here on these, using these stones. You go up the other side along the bank, and then pick up the paved trail that goes into the Northridge community. So there are some restrictions to this access because of just the natural terrain and the stream there. So it's, still, it's a difficult place for access. Just wanted to also point out to you, you probably are aware that the Bowie Heritage Trail is proposed to connect with Tanglewood at some point in the future, perhaps. At least that is the vision of the Parks and Planning Commission. And it will have some challenges of its own. The dash purple line is the Bowie Heritage Trail, and it connects with this red line, which is the WB&A Trail. And here's Tanglewood on this lower left area where this blue is, and that highlighted area is where it is. The trail is proposed to go along the edge of Tanglewood, paralleling the Popes Creek line. So anyway, like I said, it has some challenges due to all the environmental issues that we have on the site, so that's yet to be determined. So here is our site analysis. As I was explaining earlier, it is, the culmination of all of our gathering of information on the site. And it's a graphic illustration of all those existing conditions and the man-made conditions, including, the entrance, up on Zug Road. Whoops, here we go. You've got it, Matt. And let's see, these blue areas are the streams and the wetlands and the floodplain areas that are associated with the streams. The brown dashed lines are ridge lines that help us locate where the high points are and helps us understand the drainage patterns a little bit better. And then all the colored lines, the dashed and zigzaggy colored lines, is the system of trails that are there. The community groups particularly the Friends of Tanglewood, have developed a lovely trail map that's color coordinated. So we wanted to display that up here so you could, if you ever see that map, you understand what we're looking at here on the site analysis. This corresponds to the color-coded map. It's hard to see again in the slide, but the longer, thicker dashed lines are the original trails, nature trails that the city had developed when this first became a park property. And then the more zigzaggy, irregular-looking lines are the trails that were added by the community groups in more recent years. The other thing I just want to point out about the site analysis plan here is the dark green areas that you can see there around the edges that sort of form a corridor around the streams. Prince George's County has its own requirements, and they want a delineation of a vegetated buffer that protects the site's natural resources. So it's a little more stringent than just the straight stream buffers. It also takes into consideration steep slopes, which are 15% or greater. So it's a more expansive buffer area, if you will, to future development. So that is what that dark green swath indicates on the site analysis map. And it was just important that everyone understand that there are a lot of environmental constraints on this site, as wonderful as it is. So we had, as Matt said, we had our community and stakeholder input meetings, and these are the top priorities from that list. There's a much longer list, and that list, the entire list is in the master plan report, but these are the main things. And as Matt was saying, we want to have the entrance at Zug Road as the primary entrance, minimize the disturbances, minimize gravel parking. Something that was overwhelmingly cited by all the residents was to prohibit motorized vehicles on these trails, or dirt bikes, ATVs, that sort of thing, citing that there's other locations that would be much more suitable to that sort of activity. They also want to add identification signs so people know where that the park exists and what it is, and have that on Zug Road at the entrance. The community also wanted to have trash cans and some pest waste stations at the entrances, because people do like to walk their pets on the trail as well, and this will help with maintenance and cleanup and so on. And finally, again, the additional cleanup and maintenance for the trails that we're going to talk about as well. And then, of course, the city staff had some input into the process, into the program development. In general, minimize environmental impacts was very important, and that's why I wanted to show you and share with you the site analysis and the primary management area information. And along with that, perhaps widen some of the trails for emergency and maintenance access, perhaps reduce some of the number of trails, and that'll also assist with maintenance. It might also enhance the wildlife and improve the environmental situation altogether. And then finally, develop a maintenance and monitoring partnership with the local civic groups like the Friends of Tanglewood and the MAPS group. So to start with, one of the first priorities was to, how can we actuate the parking and trailhead amenities that the stakeholders were asking for? So we developed 3 options for consideration by the public, and these were presented at the second stakeholder meeting, the virtual one last month. And we're going to go through those very quickly. Again, I think you have seen those in your packages, but the first scheme, which was the one that received the most votes, Plan A, presents 5 standard parallel parking spaces along Zug Road. We'd have to expand the shoulder a little bit, to flatten it out enough to get the parking along the roadway, and also a pathway around the edge of the parking in order, to get safely out of your car and onto the trail. This will just intercept the existing gray trail here that goes through it starts at the existing entrance to the park site at the moment. And then we will include some of these site amenities that were requested, which was a bulletin board kiosk, the trash can and pet waste stations, and then we would have, site signage independently over at the side, and some sort of portable toilet facility was requested as well here. Yeah. So this plan has the least amount of environmental impacts, and I just want to try to point out, Matt, see if you can follow me. This line that has WB upside down on it is the wetland buffer, and so if we have very minimal impacts to the wetland buffer in this plan. These 2 areas that are being circled and where the yellow arrow is. So that's the plus side. On the sort of negative side would be that it's not possible to provide an ADA parking space with parallel parking spaces. It's not possible. It can't be done. And because the parking is right along the edge of the roadway, we want to be aware. We are aware that there is truck traffic on this road, on Zug Road, that comes from the industrial park that's at the end of Zug Road, right? It dead ends right at the Amtrak line. There is a little industrial park right at the end there. And so there are a lot of construction vehicles that travel this road from time to time. And so there is some issues with the potential for conflict between people parking, walking, and this traffic. So we'll require some sort of traffic calming mechanism, such as signage that will at least alert traffic going in either direction that, people are in this vicinity here that they might not normally be aware of. And the approximate cost for this, arrangement is about $65,000. The second schematic plan B, also has parking on Zug Road, but it's set back from the roadway which will help minimize the potential conflict with, the traffic on Zug Road. This provides 3 standard parking spaces and one accessible parking space on this right there, yep. But since it's pushed back away from the road more, it has greater impacts to the wetland buffer areas because we have to, level out more area in order to get flat enough space for these parking spaces. And to do that, we'll want to have some kind of low retaining wall so that we can protect the actual wetlands itself. That's the actual blue area on the screen here. Those are the wetlands themselves. So we want to protect them at all costs. That's our issue here. Now, what this does allow us, like I said, we can have an accessible parking space, and it will allow us to have a short accessible trail to perhaps a picnic table or bench area. This is where it's the flattest, right, in between the wetlands here. Any further back, and we're starting to get into the steeper part of the gray trail, which starts to go up the hill. So any accessible feature, that's where it would have to go in this scenario, where the ground is the flattest, which is 5% or less. That's the parameters for that sort of thing. So that's just sort of the limit to it. However, there could be interpretive signage there or something to, so that folks could also, partake in some of the other features of the site with the interpretive signage. So like I said, the downside would be slightly more environmental impacts than Plan A. And because it's set back further from the road, maybe we're going to have increased dumping or perhaps invite some loitering here that might be objectionable. And the cost is a little bit more at about $90,000. Now, this third scheme, it was developed mostly in an effort to show what it would take to get an ADA accessible trail system, not just this little spur like in B. So using the existing entry point, we would take a roadway following the gray trail up back to this area up in this upper left part of the screen where the slopes are 5% or less. Again, that's the parameters for ADA compliance, and that is where we would be able to develop some sort of ADA trail through the woods and an experience for those, accessible, an accessible experience up in that area. The parking area, again, would have 3 standard spots and an accessible space, and the site amenities with the toilet facility, bulletin board, and so on. And we would have site signage down by the roadway and a new gate system and so on. So again, this allows us to have an ADA experience, and by following the existing roadbed, that is the gray trail, you'll have minimal tree removal. However, as you can see, I keep doing the wrong button, my apologies. This is our dark green primary management area, and therefore we would have significantly more impacts to environmental areas by doing this. So that's our one negative. There we go. And maybe our more significant issue is security, because once again, we have provided access well into the site where it's not easily monitored. So that's problematic. But possibly we could put in some kind of controlled gate system where there's maybe an entry code required for people who want to access the site, provide some more barriers along the edges of the entrance, flanking the entrance to prevent somebody from going around the gate like they probably did in the past. And maybe more importantly, install security cameras at the entrance and in the parking area. But that's still a difficult thing to overcome, I think, the security issues. And of course, with the longer road length and all the other improvements, this has a much greater cost of somewhere around $230,000. So again, in summary, after the second stakeholder meeting, there were 10 votes in favor of Scheme A, 7 in favor of Schematic Plan B, and there were no votes for C, which I think is understandable. And since, since the majority were in favor of Plan A, this was identified for what we wanted to put in the draft in the master plan, and this is the drafted version of those, scheme A that's on the master plan drawing, again, it's on the back, the drawing on the back corner of the room. It has all of the elements that I described earlier in here. So that was one of the considerations that we needed to look at as we were developing the master plan recommendations. Now, there is a full list of recommendations on the master plan in the back, as well as a full listing in the master plan report draft that you have. But these were the main issues that city staff wanted to emphasize to you all. The first, as Matt was explaining, to rename the project as the Tanglewood Natural Area. And this is in light of the community's great interest in it remaining a primitive natural area with minimal improvements. It seemed the most appropriate name to give it. Other than the recommendations for increased police and park ranger presence, have more people coming, more looking over the site for security and for maintenance purposes. Site signage is, we want to improve the wayfinding methods that are on all of these trails. They currently have a combination of three or four different kinds of wayfinding methods. And so we want to standardize that, recommend standardizing that and providing the signs at regular intervals, and so that wayfinding will be much easier on site. We talked about the parking and trailhead amenities. There is on site, and I'll point this out when we get to the master plan, that there's a deteriorated wooden footbridge on the Green Trail, and it has been taken out of service for some time now because it's not safe. So we recommend taking out the footbridge and to help eliminate the need for maintenance of a wooden structure, replace that with large flat stepping stones that will be of the type that the National Park Service recommends, and there is actually a detail for that in the master plan report. So we would go along with the recommendations of the National Park Service. Then also do the same thing at the Northridge Stream Crossing, the one we were looking at that has that eroded area next to it. So replace that, even though it has stones there now, replace it with larger, flatter stones at regular intervals. That will be more securely placed, again, using the parameters for the National Park Service. Widen some trails, as discussed earlier, for emergency or even fire access purposes, and remove some of the trails to, as I was saying earlier, minimize maintenance, protect the environmental sensitive areas, enhance wildlife habitat by not having the trails going through some of these areas, and it might improve wayfinding if there are fewer trails, to find your way around the site. These issues, the widening of the trails and removal of some of the trails will be discussed and worked out in the future with the community organizations. So it'll be a hand-in-hand kind of process, and this will go along with the formal agreement that has been proposed between the local civic organizations, that's like the Friends of Tanglewood and the MAPS folks, with the city to assist you all with regular maintenance and inspection of the trail system. So they have great interest in this property and a great desire to see it, succeed and remain in its natural state and be safe. I think those are important factors here. So this is our master plan drawing. Just to simplify it, made a key on the right-hand side of the plan that takes you to some of the elements. Number one, I'll just kind of do a few of these just to give you an example. I did it again, I'm so sorry. Number one being the improved entrance and parking area, this being the schematic plan A that we looked at earlier in detail. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about here? There are some ruins here in this area that I'm pointing at, number 4, from the Zug Barn. There's old stone foundation there that's a wonderful resource and perhaps should be highlighted on the trail system with maybe a rest area and some interpretive signage perhaps. Down here, number 5, that is the location of the old wooden footbridge that we want to replace with the stepping stones. And again, you can look through all of these on the master plan and in the master plan report. But the last one I will just mention is, again, we were talked about the Bowie Heritage Trail that is proposed to go along the Pope's Creek line and continue north. Considering all of the environmental issues that are along this eastern part of the property, the master plan is recommending that perhaps there's just a tie-in along the road at where it would intersect, at the intersection with Zug Road, just for simplicity. But again, that's all to be worked out in the future. Okay. So down to the sort of nitty-gritty kind of stuff here that you are mostly interested perhaps. Estimated annual operational budget. So we worked with city staff to develop some of these costs. So with monthly inspections, that is based on 1 park ranger for 4 hours per week. Police presence is 1 police patrol visit per day for about 15 minutes. And the third item is that's trail maintenance, essentially tree limb removal from the trail, is contracting with a 3-person crew for 8 hours once per month for the trail maintenance. And so that approximately totals $73,000 for that, like I said, that estimated annual operational budget. Then as far as improvements are concerned, Phase 1 in fiscal year 2024, you have a budget of $30,000 currently. So with we added a few, working with city staff, we worked up what this fiscal year 2024 might look like. An approximate cost for design and engineering for the parking and trailhead, $6,500. That's just based on 10% of our estimated cost of $65,000 to build the parking and those trailhead amenities. The second item that was important for installation up front was the bridge removal I was talking about and installing the stone crossing. Considering that it's a remote site, difficult to get to, and hauling the old bridge away and hauling in new stones and all that, and contracting with someone to do that work, we estimated about $5,000 to do that. And then likewise, the stone crossing replacement at the new stop crossing at the south end, about $2,500 because we're not really removing much of anything. And I think we have a better access point from Northridge at the south. So we estimate about $2,500. $14,000 is a subtotal. We always add something for contingencies. You all know that because you don't know what you don't know at this point. So with 15% contingencies, that gets us to about $16,100 for fiscal year 2024. And for phase 2, fiscal year 2025 and beyond, again, the budget of $30,000 that we've been told. Now, to construct the trailhead and the parking area in the first part, or the fiscal year 2025, $65,000 is our estimate. And then to install the rest of the recommendations in the master plan is the list up here. As you can see, security camera system might be the most first priority of that. There's renovation of the Gray Trail, which is that main trail that comes in from the entrance and goes up the hill to the middle. The renovation would entail removing the old filter fabric and gravel from that old Park Road. And we were told by walkers that it's a tripping hazard. They get their feet stuck in the filter fabric that's sticking up, all over the place. So to make that a safer walking experience, and also to provide one access point for emergency vehicles, we're proposing some renovation to, maybe widen it a bit and remove all that material and put down some gravel for that amount of money. We talked about the wayfinding and new trail markers and replacing and making the trailblazing more uniform. You have some cost for that. There was a request for benches along the trail. We're assuming 9 of those. Some interpretive signage was requested, and that would be something, talking about the native flora or fauna, the perhaps geological features and so on that are all around the property that would make it a more educational and engaging experience to other people and the existing walkers. And then finally, there was a request to perhaps use some landscape enhancement plantings in key areas around the property with groups of native plantings that would, again, become a feature along your experience as you're walking these trails. The grand total of all that, $122,000, with our 15% contingencies, brings us up to somewhere around $300,000. Obviously, the budget needs to be adjusted, or as Matt was explaining earlier, some grants or whatever to make these things a reality over time beyond the 2025 budget period. And that is all that I wanted to present to you all tonight. I thank you all for your attention after this very long meeting that you've had, so thank you for staying awake and listening. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Lynette, for that presentation. So at this time, Council, what we're looking for would be any comments you have or the public would like to share that we would incorporate into a final master plan, and ideally we would bring that final master plan back to you sometime in early May on your consent agenda for adoption or approval.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing.
Mayor Pro Tem, we do have 4 comments that were received via email, and they were forwarded to council this afternoon. They will be part of the record for this evening, and we do have 1 person signed up for this evening.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. I'd like to invite Ken McCaughey. Did I say that right? Hopefully I did. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm Ken McCoy. I'm a member of the Multimodal Access and Public Spaces Subcommittee of the Green Team, known as MAPS. You've heard the name MAPS a few times in the presentation. MAPS has reviewed the draft plan, and MAPS believes Tanglewood can become a great public space for the people of Bowie. We are very pleased with the progress that the City Department of Community Services has made in producing this new master plan for the Tanglewood property. The new master plan is in very good agreement with the proposed vision that MAPS put forth in February of last year. The plan was further enhanced by input from the community, including Friends of Tanglewood. That was all provided in the 2 stakeholder meetings. Just to review some of the key items that MAPS felt were needed for Tanglewood. We want to be clean, safe, and open to the public. Maintained as a wilderness natural park. Retain its natural trail surfaces. Trim dead trees and limbs, make it safe. Improve the trail markers so people don't get lost. Improve access for both the North Ridge and at the Zug Road access points, provide some basic parking. Install some welcome signs with rules and trail maps and a park description. And also importantly, try to keep the costs down to a minimum. We know the budget is a contentious thing, and that's going to be coming up. And we were trying to be careful about what we were asking for and trying to be cost conscious. We think this new plan addresses all of these as part of this comprehensive plan. And we'd like to thank Sally Hine, Director of Department of Community Services, City of Bowie, Matt Reno, the Tanglewood Project Manager, and Human Rodale Incorporated Landscaping for their hard work. MAPS asks that the Mayor and City Council approve this plan, and we look forward to a Tanglewood Natural Area grand reopening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I now declare the public hearing to have been held. And now I'll move on to council members. Councilmember Steph.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Just want to say a big thank you to the Multimodal and Public Spaces Subcommittee for your work on this. Big thank you to city staff. I know we certainly had our reservations at first, namely due to the fact that, this particular property being right between Old Bowie and Northridge doesn't get a ton of visitors. And so I think there was probably an initial concern, well, how many stakeholders are being served? The good news is that this particular project, as you guys have proposed it, is not breaking the bank. It's very affordable. The recommendation, I think, for Plan A is the wisest and the most consistent with what I think you all as stakeholders and what local residents have been saying for years they'd like to see. I live in the Northridge section. I discovered Tanglewood Park during the pandemic when I had a lot of free time on my hands to hang out outdoors. I can tell you my neighbors in Northridge are very happy that the entrance is on the Zug Road side, not their side. And they are much less excited about crossing stone ponds, across those gullies as we've all kind of discovered them. And so I think Plan A is totally consistent with your guys' initial objectives. I think it totally satisfies the city's concerns that this isn't going to become mission creep, and I think it's totally consistent with what residents in both the Northridge side and the Old Bowie side have been asking for. So I'm very pleased with the presentation tonight. I appreciate the work of our presenter, and I think Plan A makes a lot of sense.
Councilmember Wolfley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Appreciate it. Just a quick comment again. Thank you all for being here this evening, and thanks to all who participated in developing the plan, both stakeholders, staff as well. I think this is going to be a nice addition to the community and a significant improvement in the utilization of the property. I think it's going to be very nice. I think it's something that, as we're looking forward to, not obviously it'll be next year's round, but I think we ought to put this on the list of grants that we be searching for, some state funding, some public space, and some open space money that's out there always in some way, shape, or form. It's got to conform or what have you, but I'm sure there's going to be something out there that will be able to help us with this as well. So I think this is a great opportunity, and will look very nice in the community. So thank you all very much.
Any other council members have any comments or questions? Awesome. I really want to thank you so much for your presentation this evening. You've given us a lot to think about, and I know this agenda item will come back up in a few months here, so at that point we'll be ready to make some decisions. So thank you so much. Alrighty, at this time I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Yeah. Second. It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, same favor. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.